just chill, and then play some BGs. So we'll see. I'm also very tired if my eyes aren't giving it away. So it's gonna be kind of a low energy, kind of a more chill stream. That's what it is. But yeah, crazy. Let's make a couple predictions. This will be fun. Let's make a couple predictions for the WoW interview of Ian. Let's make a couple. Hold on. These are my predictions. We will we'll revisit whether or not they happened at the end of the video. Okay, cool. So let's see. I made this. Okay. Let's check it out.
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. Well, I have to say, I am kind of amazed that this is finally happening over 4
Okay.
years or so. So, yeah, I wanted to say thanks a lot for coming on. I really appreciate it, man.
No, absolutely. It's a pleasure. Been a while since.
It's been a while. There it is, dude. Where's it at? Where's it at? Hold on. Let me just. It's been a while. Edit. Let's see. Yep. We got this one. There we go. All right. That one is that one's been done. That one was probably the easiest prediction I could have made, though. Let's be honest. Here we go. It's been a while. First 10
All right, Ian,
seconds.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. Well, I have to say, I am kind of amazed that this is finally happening over 4 years or so. So, yeah, I wanted to say thanks a lot for coming on. I really appreciate it, man.
No, absolutely. It's a pleasure. Been a while since bumping into you, like coming off stage at BlizzCon years back.
Yeah, 4 years ago, I saw somebody post a picture, and it was quite a shock to see how much hair I had back then. It really was.
You and me both.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to ask is, now that Shadowlands is primarily over, what would you really say are the biggest successes of Shadowlands? What do you think that we can expect to see going forward?
Good question.
Definitely Covenants. I think, Covenants, we want to make sure, like, that's actually, I think we want to fit those into Dragonflight. And
Yeah.
So high
Covenants
level,
were cool.
I think narratively, one of the big challenges and exciting things about Shadowlands was making something brand new in World of Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've over the years mined out a lot of the lore, a lot of the original settings from Warcraft 3 and onwards.
Yep.
And every time comes time to make a new expansion, one of the big questions is like, okay, where's left for us to visit? And I think the challenge of, say what you will about Sylvanas, the Jailer, the rest, I think building environments and building characters and cultures in the enchanted forest of Ardenweald and the Gothic castles and cities of Revendreth and so forth, and having that feel like an extension of World of Warcraft and having players really vibe with those environments and call them home, I think that was super satisfying for all of us.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think along the way, a lot of the realizations we came to in, driven by community feedback over the course of, the middle of Shadowlands, 9.15
Yep.
and onward, I think are something that will change WoW for the better forever going forward.
Yeah, I think so
Okay.
too. I mean, I remember watching the Taliesin interview yesterday, excuse me. And you were saying how pretty much all of the stuff is going to be account wide now for Dragonflight, or a lot of the in-game systems.
I'm sure that will be weaponized against me and us. And it's like, hey, Ian, you promised everything.
Yeah.
It's like, philosophically, it's get your gear, get your power. That's a character progression. That's part of the journey when you're making a new character. But yeah, access to content, utility, cosmetics, almost all the rest. And we also want to ask the question of, like, how fun is the content that you're going to have to do to replay multiple times?
Good question.
Exactly.
Good fucking question,
The less
Ian.
it is, the more we want to make that optional.
Yep. The less fun it is. Yeah, okay. So having like really, really boring grinds be account wide instead of having to redo them on every character for whatever fucking reason. WoW has done this for so many expansions, and it makes it almost impossible as like a new player coming in to even wrap your head around like how many hundreds of hours you'd have to pump into one expansion alone to be able to unlock everything and say that you've like genuinely 100% of the game. Whereas if you pick up like a fairly complicated game like GTA 5 or whatever, I know it's like apples and oranges, but like if you were at 100% GTA 5, it would take you a long time, but at least you only have to do it on like one playthrough and one save file. In WoW, you have to 100% GTA 5, which is way harder, and then do it on every single class, like specialization, covenant, um, engineering profession tree. Fucking like so much needs to be done, like in a repetitive fashion, to just say that you've gotten everything. And so just having like some of the simple stuff like cosmetics and maybe even like titles and stuff just be well, not titles because those are already account wide, but like yeah, cosmetics, even like reputations just be account wide. This is so much like I'm willing to put aside the lore of the character and or like I'm willing to put aside the RP of it all and like because like I get it when you log into a new character, you're technically playing a whole new character in Azeroth, but I'm willing to put aside some of that like fantasy play, I guess, um, and just have it be account wide for like the utility of the game being so much better. Like, this is one area where I'm willing to compromise, and Blizzard and whatnot doing this is fine. And surprisingly, you don't see the WoW community really like arguing against this and saying that it hurts the like sanctity of the game or anything. I think like WoW players at this point have kind of gotten beyond that, and they're like, "Dude, yes, please help us out." Versus I think like a couple years back, maybe early BFA, you might have had people be against it and say that you know playing cross faction or having this stuff be account wide sort of like diminishes the achievements of others. You may have heard that line of argument back then, but now people are just happy that Blizzard is making the game, more advantageous for new people to come in because it was kind of on the verge of dying. So it's the lesser of two evils.
Be something you can choose whether or not to do.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm very relieved to hear that. I know that was something that a lot of people complained about in BFA and also Shadowlands, so it's a huge relief. The next thing is I wanted to ask about the dragon riding abilities in combat. Do you think that we're going to be able to ride these dragons into combat in a battle like Malagos or something crazy like that?
Maybe at some point. Yeah, I think
Really?
one of the things like we don't have anything planned like that right at launch. I think we want to really understand how the system plays.
Well, one thing that I think Asmon's doing here, and I know I might be reading too much into this, but one thing that I think Asmon's doing here is he's putting a lot of softball questions up front, which is like a really like common interview technique to try to build rapport with the person. But I feel like Asmon's like laying it on thick here to where it's like pretty obvious, like that he's like Asmon. I get like sometimes when he's on stream, he's playing a character a little bit more than like his personality allows. But here it's almost like he's playing a character of a character. It's like he's laying on the rapport for Ian like pretty thick, and I feel like they could have maybe chatted like 5 minutes or so like off stream or whatever, and kind of built that rapport and got into this. Because some of these questions are, I don't know if Asmon actually cares about the answer, right? I don't know if he really like cares about the answer of his first question, or he probably doesn't even care about the answer of being able to ride dragons in combat. If it happens, it happens, right? I mean, there's so much also like it's a cool idea, but I don't know, dude. It just seems like I'm interested to see how the interview progresses because right now he's laying on the rapport like pretty thick, and I just only hope that it doesn't go on for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
And its strengths and weaknesses and what it's
Look
good
at his facial expressions.
and then
a bit weird.
Trying to incorporate your Drake companion into some future dungeon or raid encounter or even something in the outdoor world or whatever feels like a cool space to explore. But like, let's build a solid foundation first and then figure out how to build upon it.
Focus on step 1 until we get to step 5. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And so outside, dragon riding is obviously something everybody's going to be doing. And of course, we're going to get new raids, we're going to get new dungeons. But is there any other content that like just a casual player who just logs on and just wants to enjoy the game at large is going to really have to do on a daily?
Well, I mean, have to do in the mandatory sense? Or
no, like actually
exactly, yeah.
A little bit of both, but just like casual fun stuff too, like the Darkmoon Fair, for example. We going to get something similar to that?
I mean, so I think maybe not Darkmoon Fair specifically, but I think everything, events, world content in general. I think Zereth Mortis is like it's one zone. We're looking to, in a lot of ways, build an entire continent, an entire expansion with those philosophies and that approach. And so things like protoform synthesis that currently exist just as a fun collection space to explore is the kind of thing we want to do more of. I think we've in a lot of ways underserved something that may be almost a silent majority in our game, or a quiet majority, which are people who aren't looking to top meters and push keys and get their PvP rating up. They just want to explore, do chill stuff, and feel at home in the world. And while still serving the core raid, dungeon, all the rest, we want to do more for that group in particular in Dragonflight.
That is great. I totally agree. I'm really glad.
I totally agree, and I think that's necessary for casual players. Ian is speaking directly to my heart there. One thing that's troubling about what he said was Asmongold mentioned sort of like not calendar events. That's how Ian interpreted it, but he said like sort of like a community-based event like Dark Moon Fair or something like more like casual players may go and like enjoy these sort of like off-brand games and whatnot. And Ian interpreted that as protoform synthesis and Xeric Mortis, which is just a grind, a slog to collect mats to go and make pets and mounts. And it's almost like missing the point, because Dark Moon Fair, while it did have like a couple grinds, like there's like 7 pets and like 2 mounts or something. It was like there's a lot of stuff that just has no purpose. And the purpose is for it to just be fun. I feel like WoW needs to add more stuff that doesn't have a purpose, and the only purpose of it is just to have fun playing the game. And if it's like genuinely fun, and maybe it has like a little sprinkling of rewards at the end, but nothing like too crazy, then like the game just gets more full. And I feel like casual players bump into that stuff, and then they have a fun experience. And if they have a fun experience, they're likely to repeat their actions and play the game again. So I don't know. It's a little bit troubling that like Asmon would sort of like bait the hook like that again, kind of like building rapport with the Dark Moon Fair, which is an easy knock out of the park. I mean, that's a big juicy meatball. Ian could just say, "Yeah, we're looking into," but Ian says, "Yeah, we're looking into," and then he gives an example of something like extremely grindy, as 30,000 artifact whatever you have to grind out in Xeric Mortis to get all the pets and stuff, and that's just, I mean, that's asinine. That's I don't know. I'm still a little bit skeptical about that.
Glad to hear that. And another thing is that, like, we've gotten some new arenas. We've gotten the Maldraxxus arena, the Kyrian arena, but we haven't really gotten a lot of new types of content for like a PvPer to do, like battlegrounds and just types of PvP.
Totally.
Other than obviously solo shuffle, and apparently raided's coming to that. Are we going to see more battlegrounds or more war mode features in Dragonflight as well?
Long term, that's something we want to do. I think the focus, as you mentioned, is on a rated version of solo shuffle, making some changes to the way gearing works in PvP to make it more just like a couple of fixed tiers. So the conquest gear is conquest gear. You don't have to worry about upgrading it as you go up in rating, so that the experience of getting into the season or catching up on alts is less painful.
Okay.
And I think with war mode, we often, the best war mode content is the organic stuff. It's not the thing that we set up as like a specific PvP event, but it's something like assaults in 8.1 BFA, where it's like there's just stuff that both factions want to do. There's extra bonuses for having war mode on. There's natural collision that occurs, and that makes for some fun world PvP. On the battleground question,
the thing I'll say about war mode is that or world PvP is that he's missed the mark a little bit here. Like, it seems like Ian is saying that some of the best world PvP just happens organically and sort of naturally occurs, but that's actually not that true. The best world PvP kind of happens when the game. It's almost like if you play Dungeons and Dragons, like the players in Dungeons and Dragons could run around and do whatever the fuck they want at the end of the day, and they wouldn't need a game master, right? They could just, maybe the game master would just sort of shepherd them through, impromptu creations in their mind. But actually, what Blizzard's done is that they've created things like Ian mentioned, like the assaults in BFA, or like certain objectives throughout Shadowlands that kind of like shepherd all the players to one central zone. So that way, like PvP, world PvP is most likely to exist around these kind of areas. But what's weird is that all of that I just mentioned, all of these things are just like, oh, you have to go there to get honor and you have to go there to get this or that. And so what happens is it ends up being predominantly one faction that shows up there and they min-max the fuck out of it to earn that thing. Think of Najjatar and how many groups were there, farming different achievements or farming all the chests to get all the unlocks and whatnot. So yeah, and then you have like server imbalance and stuff, and how does like cross faction play work into world PvP? I feel like the answer is like needs to be a little bit more complicated with world PvP and how they're going to fix that going forward. Because world PvP kind of dies as soon as flying gets unlocked. If they're going to release flying or a version of flying right at the start, then it's like, hey, I don't know. They need to do something because the world PvP is basically dead as soon as people take off the ground because then they're able to just min max wherever the fuck they want, or start up a group to get things, or just phase out of a certain layer into another layer where there's no horde or alliance. It just ends up being like really really weird. So world PvP is sort of like more fundamentally broken, and not really looked at. And again, I don't think that like Blizzard is really designing world PvP just for like the fun organic sort of clashes that are going to happen. Think like Battle over Terran Mill, or sorry, yeah, Battle Terran Mill and Hillsbrad. Stuff like that doesn't really happen. But yeah, I don't know. I think everything else that he said was very good, and I think he's Ian's always just kind of like dancing around like being spot on in my mind and how I'm viewing things. But it always seems like he's just like like there's like a footnote there that's just kind of like missing, and so that just has me remaining a little bit cautious.
We want to add more battlegrounds. I think there's
Do
work
it.
we need to do to overhaul our kind of underlying BG system before that makes sense. I think part of what we've seen
Ooh.
over the years when we add battlegrounds, we're adding one battleground into a big rotation. Which most people random queue for.
Hell
You
yeah,
might,
brother.
queue all afternoon and not land in the new battleground at all. And so it's like, is that really changing the experience in the way that we would hope that new content would? That's why
Well,
I
that's
think
interesting.
recently you've seen us pivot to brawls a lot, where we can have at least focus on that specific brawl in a
Yeah.
specific week or two. But I think as our general approach of looking at evergreen systems and foundations of our game continues, we have the ones we're focusing on right now for Dragonflight. I think looking at how the BGQ pool works, and maybe there's something we can do there with a seasonal rotation going forward that lets us bring in new maps and focus on specific ones. There's a lot of stuff we want to explore in the future, but not for Dragonflight right at launch.
So kind of like the seasonal thing that you're doing with the dungeons in Mythic Plus, kind of.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And
Yeah, it makes
now I
sense
have
to me
kind of
too.
a much bigger question: is that every expansion we
There
go
we go.
up like 100 or 150 item levels. Like characters at the beginning of the expansion are doing 20,000 DPS. At the end, they're doing 100, like 5x more. And like we've had so many stat squishes right now, we need one like every other expansion. And like with BFA, we needed one just inside of that expansion. Do you guys see that as a problem, or is that going to be pretty much just the norm going forward?
I don't know why it's a problem.
There are aspects of it that are problematic. I think not
Wow.
having that extra multiplicative borrowed power helps keep that power creep in check. Like over the course of Legion, some of your power came from gear. A huge portion of it came from dozens of artifact traits and legendaries and all the rest multiplying across that.
It was great.
But the item level progression, honestly, that's been part of World of Warcraft since I would say the middle of Wrath of the Lich King.
Mhm.
Right
Yeah.
around like Ulduar into TOC into Icecrown was the first time in WoW where Blizzard kind of officially said you don't need to go back and farm old raids anymore. You don't need to keep farming for your DFT all expansion long or whatever. It's just the new tier is a
Damn,
fresh
dude.
start. And
Right in the fucking feels with DFT, man. Hey, whoa, hold on, Ian. You don't need to bring up fucking DFT, okay, dude? Holy shit, dude. I think I know people who still haven't gotten DFT. Holy shit. Oh, man. I'm gonna clip that and send it to him. Alright, listen, you don't need to go back and farm DFT anymore.
and that has a lot of advantages in terms of just
Well,
accessibility, making it feel like it doesn't matter if you missed a patch, you're not forever behind. You can come back, join your raid guild, play with your friends, jump in, join pugs, whatever, and do the new thing. And that's just kind of how WoW has been for the last 15 years. I think we've experimented a bit with item level gaps between tiers, but what we often find is if an item isn't at least a certain percent better than what you got months ago, and you're having to learn an all new encounter or go into an all new challenge to get it, that just doesn't feel good as a reward. If you're, a guild that does normal raids and progresses into heroic over the course of a tier, let's say, but you're going to start in normal of the next tier. If that gear isn't better than what you're wearing, like, what's the point? Where do we even go from there? And so that has dictated certain gaps. And I think the most important thing is that rewards feel rewarding in the short term. And one of the burdens of the years long, decades long life cycle is doing things like squishes. But while we don't love it from an elegance perspective, I think it's better than saying this patch or this raid tier is not going to feel rewarding just so that it buys us more long term room.
And like how
I kind of agree with Ian. I don't know why it really fucking matters. If just mathematically things, make more sense to go to the new patch, get the new gear, and players feel rewarded by that, like, isn't that enough? I don't know. I don't really get Asmon's kind of point in bringing up this question, why doing bigger numbers at the end of the expansion is, so bad. I don't know. I just don't get it.
How long do you view that like kind of upgrade cycle being? Because we've had a few of these overlaps happen. Like you remember like Ashvane's Razor Coral or like Ashara's Font. Do you see it as a
Razor
positive
Coral,
or a
goddamn.
negative, or like, because what happens nowadays is that it feels like you're not really playing the whole expansion. You're just kind of playing just the patch. It's like during Sanctum of Domination, why would you go back into Castle Nathria? And especially nowadays, why would you go back? And it seems like you're trying to solve that problem a little bit in Season 4 with like these new affixes and things like that. So is that something that we can expect to see going forward into Dragonflight?
Interesting.
Not initially,
Okay.
I don't think, but the Season 4 experiment, like I think as a capstone to expansions, is something that if this works, I'd love to repeat and love to have a little bit of a remix to help avoid content droughts at the end of expansions, along with, of course, just getting the damn expansion out faster.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think a lot of this is listening to what players prefer. I think a lot of what we've heard is that when there are those one or two outlier items from prior tiers that feel relevant long term, we get negative feedback on that. People who don't really feel like they want to have to go back and farm up Sylvanas daggers or whatever else, particularly if they skip that tier and now you're like, oh, I want to switch to Rogue for Sepulcher. Oh, I have to go find pugs and go back and do this other thing. And also, when it's the idea of making more stuff in that space, people are often happy to move on from a setting that they've spent months in, whether it's raiding with a guild, progressing, or pugging. A new environment is part of what's exciting there. So I think we're open to it, and if there's a couple of outliers, we definitely don't want to stop those items from being exciting. But I'm not sure. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I'll certainly look at feedback that comes out after this interview. But I'm not sure people are clamoring to have reasons to go back and do Sanctum every week right now.
It's weird because like for some people I think they enjoy it, for others they don't. I mean, I know that you can always go back and think of the items from like BC or even Wrath, or especially Classic. It's like people went back and remember they used that Classic trinket in like on Lich King, right? Like that kind of stuff is really cool.
You remember?
Yes, the Scarab Brooch from Vicitus, exactly.
Scarab Brooch.
And that stuff is great, but at the same time, it's just not. It can be frustrating for people at the same time, and so it's like where that balance is. But you're in general okay with a few items spanning a couple of tiers.
I would say a couple of tiers is probably a lot. I think one tier is fine.
I guess so.
Yeah, something like Sylvanas daggers is fine.
No Arcana Crystal.
Yeah, no, not so much. No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, now that we're talking about loot, why do you not want to bring back Master Looter?
So I'm sure everyone is like, why are you even wasting time asking this question? I've answered it 50 times. What if I told you I kind of do want to bring back Master Loot?
Okay.
Okay. The team does. So it's an interesting, something we've been reflecting on a lot in the last like year and a half, in looking at places where we in the community have differed over the years and kind of reevaluating some of our thinking. Loot is a tricky one. I think going back to Legion, we had personal loot and group loot in parallel, and maintaining like two versions of loot, both in terms of how its data is set up, the UI experience, the code, was a mess. And that was something we wanted to get out of for a bunch of reasons. And I think at the time, we were looking at group loot, saw a bunch of problems with this structure we built. We're like, let's tear it down, let's lay new foundations, let's build a new system that's all personal. And over the last few years, we've been iterating on it and refining it and adding rules and exceptions. But there's a lot of problems with it. Clarity around what's tradable is pretty bad. The feeling of, hey, an item just dropped and it's technically an eye level upgrade, but I'm not going to use it and I can't give it to my friends.
Yeah,
That feels pretty bad.
that sucks.
We certainly haven't, solved degenerate behavior from world first guilds. If anything, it's gotten worse with all the cross server
Seems
stuff
that way.
and
It
buyers.
seems that way.
And so we're taking a hard look at where we want to land going forward. The challenge is we've spent like 6 years building on those new foundations, and so it's not just something where you can flip a switch and say, all right, everything works the way it did. But I think there's a lot to be said for keeping personal loot in some spaces, like outdoor world, trash and dungeons and raids. Like I don't think anyone needs group loot trappings there. But the core experience of like you kill a raid boss, there's 4 things on the corpse, and you figure out what you want to do with those 4 things. That's something we'd like to get back to.
Yes.
I don't have the ability to promise that all the work to make that happen can occur in just the next few months. But in terms of long-term heading, I think that's what we're thinking.
Holy shit, dude. That'd be pretty dope. I think that'd be great for world first guilds as well, which is like a super, super small percentage of the population. But having Master Looter on, it's not going to affect the casual player experience at all, but in a way it could if a particular guild is saying that they're doing a Master Looter kind of system. That'd be interesting. I'm also going to say that this one is both of them going bro mode. I'm going to say Ian went bro mode there for a bit. I'm sorry, but dropping a degenerate there's the world first guild, I think is going to be bro mode. So that's all 3 predictions I got right. Asmon saying it's been a while. Technically Ian said it, but it was implied. Ian going bro mode, and then Asmon shit talking BFA Shadowlands, and Ian sort of giving this long, rambly sort of business speak through it. There it is, boys. We did it.
So it's not that the team is necessarily ideologically opposed to this. It's just that there was a lot of tech problems and like the dissonance. And
I don't get it, dude, because add-ons are able to fix that.
Just caused up problems.
It's basically we have our tools, our code, every assumption we've made, how we build loot tables from 2018 onwards has gone in one direction, and now we would need to just turn back around. And I think there's a lot of questions to figure out also. I think we should also bear in mind that going back to group loot means that like you can have a bow drop with no hunters in the raid.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a thing that will happen and feels bad, but that's kind of okay.
Transmog piece.
Yeah, because the thing we can't have happen is a world where loot is still smart, and if you stack a group with like 6 warriors, you're only going to get warrior loot, and it's completely tradable with no restrictions. That just kind of breaks everything. So we need to just figure out a middle ground going forward, but that's something we want to do.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I guess that does definitely make sense. I mean, logistically, it seems like it would be very, very easy to stack a raid in that regard. And, I would advocate for that, but that's a little bit too much in my own personal interest. But another thing is that the add-ons nowadays, we see that there's a huge UI redesign that's being done with Dragonflight, and I think that's a good thing. And you see nowadays, like many people, whenever they're joining a guild, having weak auras or having DBM is pretty much required, and it creates like this artificial gap between like casual players and hardcore players. It's kind of like a 2-part question, and like number one, like does the team, I mean just straight up, does the team design like these like heroic and like mythic encounters for add-ons, same with like Mythic Plus? And the second part is are we going to see more of these features incorporated into the game?
Good question.
Yeah, so that's an awesome question. It's something we spend a lot of time, especially recently, debating. We design acknowledging the existence of add-ons. I think we have to. Sometimes we're actually designing and implementing mechanics in ways that are going to try to work around add-ons, whether it's like the entering the code to disarm the bomb on Mechatork, or the Among Us game on Lords of Dread, and fixing stuff to plug loopholes that people found, because we know like, hey, we have
all of those examples, people came up with fucking add-ons to get around it. The Among Us add-on, Weak Aura, where you just vote on the player. It just, Yeah, it's fucking gross, dude. People get the add-ons, and then if you don't have the add-ons, you get kicked from the raid. And the add-ons basically shortcut the mechanic that makes the entire boss fight fun. It's just fucking. It's really something.
Have this idea that could be really fun gameplay, but if an add-on solves the whole thing for you, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Yep.
So we have to acknowledge its existence.
Oh
Ultimately, we're
Christ.
tuning raid encounters in particular with two goals. One, it should be fun. It's kind of
Yep.
goal number one. Goal number two is it should provide an appropriate progression experience for what the difficulty and where it is in the raid. And so, a heroic boss that's like late in the tier, our goal ultimately, we probably want that to take like 10, 15 wipes to beat, maybe a couple nights. Ideally, a good progression experience is for a heroic guild. You spend your first night, make good progress, you're getting to the start of phase 3, you come back the next night, you tighten up your execution, you get the kill, feels good. Feels like you earned something, but it's also not super frustrating. If you walk in and you kill the boss in 2 pulls, that's a letdown. We actually you didn't really get to feel the progression experience that you're looking for.
Yep.
And the reality is people are using add-ons. And so if we build an encounter that was theoretically, completely doable and targeted at, assuming you don't have add-ons at all and aim for that difficulty target, people are going to use DVM and weak auras and
It
go
shifts
in
the
and
distribution
mechanics and have an easier than intended time. So we have to acknowledge it in that world.
Yep.
Do we want you to feel like you have to download third-party programs to succeed in your game? Nope. None of that feels good.
Yep.
Over the years, we've tried to incorporate aspects of that functionality in our base. Even, sometimes it's just design, like making telegraphs better, or using the energy bars of bosses, mana bars, other ways of signaling, hey, when this bar fills up, a huge ability is going to happen, so you don't need a timer to let you know to prepare for it. Information is something we want to continue to improve and provide in our game. I think that's a core function of encounter design. The problem that we've seen, and that we don't really know how to solve, frankly, right now, is that over the last few years especially, add-ons have moved out of informational into more and more computational.
It's insane.
And like that, then that's the kind of thing that's like solving the problem for you doesn't feel like a thing that it'd be bizarre for our own UI to do. Like, and a random example, we were talking about this actually in the office last week. Wrath Classic's coming out later this year. Eventually, you're going to get to Ice Crown Citadel. Random encounter from Wrath that came to mind was like Blood Queen Lanethel and Ice Crown Citadel. Really simple fight. Couple of mechanics, almost patchwork level, but the one signature mechanic, of course, was gotta turn to a vampire, bite other people so that you don't get mind controlled. Back in the day, I think I, as a raid leader anyway, I think most people kind of call that out on the fly.
Call out names,
like you have some rough sense of like, hey, these are our top DPS, or these are people who are bite the healers last. See what happens, and it's fun. You have frantic call outs, and it could be hard. Sometimes you would wipe just because you had to go from 8 to 16. People got confused. I can guarantee that when Wrath Classic Lanethel comes around, it's going to be get a weak aura.
Yep.
You list the people in your raid from top to bottom in terms of DPS priority. Everyone installs the weak aura, and when you become a vampire, all it's going to say is fight this person.
Go here. Yep.
No one has to speak. No one has to do anything.
No one has to communicate.
That's not great all around.
That fucking sucks.
Where we want our raid encounters to land. In some ways, it stops us from doing cooperative mechanics and coordination that's fun. And I think
it stops me from doing the entire thing.
Always possible. People just never did it. Like in add-ons back in the day, like bigwigs and stuff actively tried to avoid even making strategy recommendations. It was purely informational. And so maybe there's like an alternate timeline where if guilds had been doing this stuff 12 years ago, the same way AVR got locked down, or like back in Classic, cast canceling add-ons and decursive got changed. Maybe that change would have happened. But now we have like a decade worth of add-ons, including things you use to play your rotation better and all the rest that are built on that framework. So it's not clear what the path forward is. I think we'd have to like do something like restrict what add-on APIs can access, at least in raids and dungeons. Maybe try to offer more of the like proc tracking, class mechanic stuff in our base UI, and maybe get to a place where we can design encounters from the ground up. Still hard, still meant to take a couple dozen pulls on heroic or 100 pulls if it's a late mythic end boss. That's not what we're not talking about nerfing stuff. We're making it easier, but we'd have to make those changes in concert. It's a lot to tackle, and I know that for a lot of players, hey, we broke the thing that you rely on that makes the game feel more accessible to you, isn't exactly a good message to swallow either. So
oh my god,
no easy answers, but it's something.
Dude,
we're thinking about a lot.
Yeah.
What an impossible problem for Blizzard to fix. Because either way, if they take a stance on either side of this issue, and it is an issue, they just get fucked, right? I mean, if they take a stance and they decide, hey, you know what, we're either going to disable this add-on or we're going to, genuinely, it's just such a cat and mouse game. We're going to encrypt this sort of thing to a point where add-ons are not, true randomness behind this mechanic or whatever. One, I don't know if true randomness is really like fun from a gameplay point of view, but you know what I mean. I mean, if they like try to get around it and make something, then players are going to struggle with it or whatever, and want to min max it, and if they break their add-ons, then that's not a fun experience. They've been used to these for a while, and so screw you, Blizzard, for making the game, whatever. And then like, but if they like go with it, then you still have the same problem, and you have these fucking raids where nobody really even needs to talk, and you can just sort of steamroll a heroic raid by just not knowing the mechanics and just standing there and DPSing, and whatever your screen tells you to do, you just do it. I mean, that's what I did for the last like 3 raid tiers. Is I just fucking went in, and with DBM told me to run up to somebody, or if it told me to get out of the way, or if it told me to make a line, or if it told me to go under and do something, I just did it. And so yeah, with him talking about these add-ons as being like computers at this point, it's totally true. I'm just able to follow whatever the message says on screen and just autopilot all the content. And so at the end of the raid, you don't feel like super accomplished. You just feel like, yeah, I did the thing. I didn't get any loot this time, but you know what? It's going to be easy. Next week I'll do the same thing again. Like, what the fuck, dude? Whereas like ideally it would be like an actual feat of like gaming experience and challenge to go through these, but now they almost like develop the game with add-ons in mind, to where it would be like very, very hard to go through these raids with no add-ons. That would actually be an interesting like YouTube series or something, as a guild where everybody agrees in the guild to not use add-ons, and then try to go through the raid without any sort of raid assistance add-ons. That would be really, really interesting. Granted, I think that a lot of people would be able to like learn from others and like watch the content and see other people's add-ons and kind of get the gist of it. Um, but maybe not for some mechanics. That would be interesting to see, like what a no add-on raid would kind of look like. And frankly, at the end of the day, they could do this. They could just say like, hey, when you phase into a raid, these add-ons are no longer going to be available. I mean, they certainly have the right to do. Very, very, very weird, very interesting, indeed, to see what happens here. And I agree with Ian that this is a really, really hard problem. I hope they get to.
I think so. I remember very clearly back in ICC where AVR got disabled, and then also didn't that happen also in Nighthold with like Star Augur and Exorcist too?
Yeah, it was like that. Yeah, that was like different ways of putting
the
3D
lines,
stuff, like attaching to nameplates, or yeah.
So have you all ever thought about actually just like disabling the combat add-ons? Has there ever been conversations about that, or is it just kind of an idea?
I mean, it's an idea that we've had conversations about. The challenge is like, the fundamental piece is, can add-ons tell what buffs and debuffs you have on you and members of your group have on them? If we say no, okay, cool, we just broke like all raid frames, everything that you use to, even just baseline, tracking
a lot of PvP stuff too.
Slice and dice or whatever. You just want an add-on that makes that easier to see. We broke all of that. Right. That would be, I think, pretty ruinous for a good chunk of our player base to do suddenly. So I think we want to try to figure out a path forward, but
do it gradually.
It's not clear.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. And will we be seeing some of those improvements and kind of some of those implementations of some add-on features in the new UI that's going to be coming out in Dragonflight?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something, and I guess we didn't get a chance to really touch on it in the deep dive. Crash Reed, who was the UI designer speaking in that deep dive, one of the things that he's worked on is kind of it's kind of trying to replicate what a lot of people do with weak auras, which is centralizing information about buff uptime, debuff uptime, cooldown tracking, kind of pulling that information towards the center of your screen. So the default UI experience, we can flag abilities for your class as things that you should be able to track very visibly. We can even show things, externals. Like if you're a tank and someone puts pain suppression on you, Paint suppression
Bad.
duration should be right there in the middle of your screen under your character if you opt to have that on, next to your shield wall or whatever else, because that's helping you manage your own ability usage. Again, of course, like a pro tank with weak auras is going to customize things that's like just for them, but we want the default out of the box experience to be much, much better. And we know that like it's not realistic to design mechanics that ask you to track uptime of a buff when that buff is like a flashing thing in the corner of your screen 12 inches away from where your eyes are focused otherwise.
And it's super small and nobody's looking up there. As a new player joining WoW, like there's no chance in hell that a new player would A, let alone just dive into WoW, and then B, be like, oh, okay, well now I need to mod my game so that way I can do the content eventually. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like for a new player to A, join the game, buy a subscription to the game, and then like go in and start, playing and like just kind of struggle and not quit immediately, and then like be faced with like, oh, you don't have 40 different add-ons, so your UI looks terrible, and your UI is from 2004 or 2005, and you're not even able to do the raid encounters because you don't have everything here, and people are just slam dunking you with these like computer add-ons that are computationally intensive. It's like, what the fuck, dude? So yeah, the UI is deeply needed. I feel like a lot of the WoW community is just kind of glancing over this, but the UI is like in many ways the first impression that new players get of the game. And if it looks terrible, new players aren't going to want to like kind of slog through that. They're not going to feel nostalgic or interested or whatever. They're a new player, so this is super smart from a business sense. And yeah, that's about that.
We need to do better. Dragonflight's UI isn't just aesthetic, it's trying to tackle that too.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. I think that's something that's long overdue, and I know almost everybody uses something that's similar to that too. And I was also wondering, obviously add-ons make it easier, and I don't really ever think that we're going to see a world where none of the raids or dungeons are on PTR or something. But were you all happy with what happened with the with Sepulcher and not having some of those fights on the PTR? Because I do think that data mining and a certain degree of it, like for example, we saw the jailer's corpse before we knew what happened at the end of the raid. It's a little bit of a spoiler, right? So like, do you think that is a negative thing for the game? And do you think that we'll see more content not being on PTR and players actually experiencing it whenever it comes out?
Please let that be a thing.
I think we're happy with how the Sepulcher bosses worked out. They weren't like completely free of bugs, but overall, I think it was a smooth experience for all the guilds that went through it and all difficulties. And the fact that like it was a genuine surprise and people were figuring it out as they went, like all of that was exciting to see. We'd like to do more of that. Data mining in general, I mean, I think when it comes to story, definitely makes for some odd like piecemeal. Experiences where this portion of the story is visible, but then like no one knows what the cinematic is, so then all of the focus becomes the cinematic as opposed to.
Totally agree, Jeff. I mentioned that earlier today. I totally agree. Yeah, it definitely shows like a change in Blizzard's mentality to even like hop on with Asmongold after 4 years of radio silence, or just like basically blatantly negative speech, right?
The entire story that's told in context. Yeah, ultimately we want to strike a balance between being able to get the feedback that's going to be important to make the game better. I think if we didn't have PTR at all, well, people wouldn't have had a chance to tell us after playing with and testing their set bonuses on target dummies or going into the raid that, hey, this feels kind of frustrating, or I don't like the way this interacts with my rotation. And we wouldn't want to lose all of that. That's not like finding bugs. That's just getting ahead of important feedback that's going to make the game better for more people.
Yeah.
But the flip side is, there's something magical about just a sense of mystery and discovery that's really hard to get. It's impossible to preserve in the modern day and age. Like everything's going to be on the internet. There's going to be guides.
It's on YouTube or whatever. Yeah.
But like, the more it's out there before the thing is even officially launched, the more there isn't even that tiny window to enjoy a sense of discovery. I know you played this game a bunch. Like, played a lot of Elden Ring right when it came out a couple months ago, and one of the really fun things about that first week, especially with how vast that game was, is like you could go to a wiki and the wiki would be blank because people hadn't figured it out yet. You could find a cave and be like, I don't know what I'm going to find here, and nope, there's nothing that will tell me right now. Of course, over time the meta gets.
Dude, I love stuff like this because it's like I'm sure there are things in WoW right now that nobody has discovered yet. I'm thinking of like the mysterious fruit in Zereth Mortis, like. you just get this like glowing light over you, but nobody knows what it does. Like I'm sure there's stuff like that, and like what's weird is whenever there's a new expansion or new raid that comes out, people just data mine the shit out of it, and so they'll find things like the jailer's dead body before we even know that we killed the jailer. And that that really sullies the experience, and then it gets uploaded to all of Wowhead, and then everybody makes videos about it and speculates about it, and then it happens, and it's like, oh, see, we were right, and it's like, okay, well, I don't know, so it's just like really really weird. And if Blizzard worked a lot harder to like kind of preserve all of those like first time experiences, then you can kind of like recapture like some of the best moments in WoW history, like when people first killed Wrath of the Lich King, and we're able to see the final animation and role play involved with that, or I'm sure the first time that Ragnaros flipped his hammer up in the air and sank down into lava. I mean, there's like these like historic moments that exist, and I like what Ian and Asmon are saying here is that like at the end of the day it is going to be spoiled to everybody, but it isn't spoiled to like the people who are like the first ones there to like experience it, and everybody kind of experiences it alongside them, like through their lens of seeing it, instead of like some pixelated data mined thing that some nerd just opened up all of the packages and read the text files and stuff, and it's like it is different to me. It is different. So I do think this is like important. And I don't know if Ian's putting like the level of seriousness on it or not.
Solved, but being able to feel like
it is
you
important.
have that sense of discovery and exploration is something we'd love to get back to.
Okay. Yeah, there we go.
Just working on encryption technology, working on thinking about how we can test portions of our game.
I was so bad at this. I have no fucking idea.
All
multi-million-dollar company
in our long-term plans.
That would be awesome. And yeah, I totally agree. It's like whenever there's something new in the game and nobody really knows how it works, I think that a really good example of this on a small scale is the puzzles. Whenever the community is working together to figure out the puzzles, that's like one of the most hype moments for everybody. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Totally agree.
Next thing I was wondering about is the what do you think is going to happen? Like now Wrath of the Lich King Classic coming out. Obviously, Wrath of the Lich King is going to run its course. Then what?
So at this point, I'd love to hear from you, from the community as a whole, what you want to come next. I think we have a player base that really has made Classic their home. Many people who've carried their characters forward from Classic into Burning Crusade and likely into Wrath beyond that.
Sure.
And when that comes to an end, when you defeat the Lich King, when you kill Halion, the ultimate end boss of Wrath of the Lich King.
Oh yeah.
Can't forget Ruby Sanctum. Come on. Do you want to start over? Do you want to try a different version of that? Do you want to carry that character forward into a new adventure?
They're avoiding saying Cata.
Cataclysm for many people is like, oh, that's the beginning of the end, and I'm out.
Once the world revamp,
But I'd ask like an interesting question is maybe like, what is it about Cataclysm that you don't like? Was it the heroic dungeons? Was bad? Is Firelands a bad raid? Is Twilight Highlands a bad zone?
I never played Cataclysm. Well, I mean, I guess I did because I played retail, but like I never experienced Cataclysm when it came out. But the thing that I think pisses me off the most, and part of the reason why Classic WoW had so many people like backing it, was that like all of the dungeons and all of the zones and all of like that classic vibe and like nostalgia and stuff that were there, and even to some extent a ton of like items and mounts and stuff, were completely like stripped and changed from the game. And so like all the dungeons would just be like very linear, and all the quest givers were right at the start. And I don't know, dude. It was just like that really like shocked me, because I would play retail and I'd go through these things and be like, wow, yeah, Classic fucking sucks. And then you go back and you play the original original Classic when it relaunches, and dude, it's like so much better. Like the original way that Classic were, like where Stratholme is this like massive sort of dungeon and not like these two separate instances with like little text box and stories as you go and NPCs talking. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, Cataclysm just reshaped so much of the old stuff and like force fed it down your throat that is just like, oh my god, dude. It tried to make the new player experience like so watered down, and like it's almost like you get a steak dinner with Classic. Like you have to chew on it a bit, but like it tastes good while you're eating it, and then what Cataclysm did was it threw it in a blender and added a bunch of milk and water and said, hey, this is good for you. It's got all the essential nutrients, but it tastes like shit. It tastes like milk steak. I don't know, dude. That was always my big take on Cataclysm was that I don't know, they just like ruined all the old stuff before it.
Like, is that the problem, or was it, I don't know, Elfyr and Dungeon Finder from the start, and removing group quests from the world or whatever else, or
Yeah,
compressing
that
the
too.
talent trees? Like, what would it look like if you had Cata content with some changes? Lots of stuff is on the table, but I really welcome that discussion now that the fact that we're doing Wrath is, no longer the world's worst kept secret and actually something that's known, but we're listening.
Did
Okay,
anybody
that's
ever
great.
think it
I
wasn't gonna
had no
happen?
idea that there was like, yeah, you just waiting to see what the community wants to hear. And I guess to a certain
Survey.
extent, that's kind of what you were probably
Survey
doing
it.
with Season of Mastery, I'm assuming.
Very much so, yeah.
Okay, all right. I know we don't have a lot of time here, so I do want to do one last question. And so at the end of Legion, so like there's a cinematic, and Sargeras, as you know, stabbed the Earth with a sword, and it's been there for quite a while, and I'm not really sure like where are things going with that.
Wait, what? What sword?
Okay, dude. All right. All right, man. All right, Ian. Look at it. What the fuck? What sort are you talking about? Okay, dude. All right. I need to get it. I need to get that one more time. Hold on.
Lots of stuff is on the table, but
Oh my
Assuming.
fucking god.
very much so, yeah.
Okay, all right. I know we don't have a lot of time here, so I do want to do one last
Sword.
question. And
Sword.
so at the end of Legion, so like there's a cinematic, and Sargeras, as you know, stabbed the Earth with a sword, and it's been there for quite a while, and I'm not really
Been there
sure
for a
like
while.
where are things going with that.
Wait, what? What sword?
Okay. All right. I get it. I see. That's pretty much exactly what I would expect. Okay. Thank you, Ian. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Oh
This was
my
amazing.
god.
I hope that we can do it again, by the way. So
Wow.
feel
Pleasure
free
chatting. Great
anytime.
questions.
Yeah, feel free anytime to come on my stream. If the PR is not going to freak out too much about it, please feel free. Come on my stream, hang out whenever you want.
All right, dude.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to Dragonfight. I'll see you later.
Thanks, Zach. Take
See
care.
ya. Peace.
Aw.
Okay, let's see here.
Holy
See if
shit,
I
dude.
got everything good, and I've got to make sure that he said it. I can't believe it. All right, I think that we're good.
Who the
Linksy,
fuck
are
is
we
that?
good? Let me make sure.
You are great.
Okay,
Thank you
I'm good.
so
Did I
much.
do a good job?
Oh my gosh, that was great. Great questions. You did wonderful. Thank you. I love your
Yay.
segments too. You're so good.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
it's what you do. It's a professional thing. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for setting all this up.
Thank you so
Aw.
much.
Of course.
Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. I will
I
be
want her
more than
headset.
willing to do it again in the future. So just let me know.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
great.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Good luck stream. Bye stream.
Thanks. See ya.
Aw. All right, dude. So my predictions, I deleted them, but all my predictions were right. And god damn it, what else? Fucking hell, man. That was so funny. So just to recap, I think the next expansion is going to be really, really good. I mean, so I think it's going to be above average. I'll say that. I think it's going to be above average expansion. I think it's going to be an expansion that's better than BFA and Shadowlands. And I think Shadowlands is like the end of Shadowlands, anyways, is like pretty digestible. I do have a couple concerns, like based on like some of the things that Ian said, that seemed like he was kind of missing the point on just like I guess some of my biggest criticisms was I don't know if WoW is going to develop content merely for the sake of it being fun and not having like a shit ton of rewards stable to it, or some sort of like insane challenge title or whatever. Like I get that like you need to have some sort of reward, but sometimes the reward can have it just be that it's really, really fun. So I don't know if like Blizzard is interested in really doing that. And that was kind of a question that Asmon was asking about. Also, I think that there should be a lot more like community events. Like I think the weekly chest actually is a good community event where everybody goes and opens it. I don't know if they're going to do a lot of stuff like that, which is kind of a bummer if you don't see it. what else? And then yeah, the world PvP and battlegrounds thing. Like I think they're going the right direction with battlegrounds and like needing to sort of spice things up. I think the solo queue and like the brawls are a good idea. But the world PvP responses seemed to like miss the mark a little bit on what Ian said. It seemed like Ian, um, thought that they could just sort of like be hands off on world PvP and then have it be like a more like generic encounter. But I actually think that some of the best world PvP is where the game designers sort of like funnel Alliance and Horde into one area to sort of grind things out. And basically, whenever you get flying, it just kills world PvP altogether. And so like I don't know if they're going to make any like fundamental changes to actually make world PvP like viable or more interesting for Horde or Alliance, depending on the server, and how cross faction interaction is going to even work with world PvP. Seems a little bit weird. I don't know. So yeah, there's still a couple concerns, but I think like overall, like if we were to rate it out of 10, I think I'm like a 7 optimistic, maybe even an 8 optimistic, but I'm not really at that like holy shit this is a 10. But I'm not at like a 4 or 5 either. So yeah, I guess I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic. Wrath, I don't fucking know about Wrath, man. Doesn't it just seem like with Wrath, it's like this is what I think my experience will be with Wrath. I think I'll level up to 80. And then I may do a raid if I'm invited, but I probably won't be invited because everybody else would have gotten to level 80 like 3 weeks before me and would have already had all their pre-bis and all their reputations and everything already farmed out, and I'd be so far behind because everybody's min-maxing classic these days that I don't feel like I would have a raid spot. And so let's say magically I do have a raid spot though. It's like, okay, well, I'll show up to the raid, twice a week and do, the content, and the progression is like more or less fun. And then it's followed by like about 5 to 6 months of doing the same raid over and over and over and over and over again until you're blue in the face. And even redoing the raid when nobody needs anything. So just a mere time waste to do the old content for nobody. Or like 2 people. And so you do it over and over and over, and those 2 people should just be pugging it at that point. Like sorry, you're the weakest link or whatever. Just go pug it. And so you just redo the same content over and over. And eventually, what happens is the next raid comes out, and then you do that one over and over and over until finally the end of the expansion hits, and you're on the whatever it is, like Black Temple or fucking Naxxramas, and you do that one over and over and over until the next thing comes out. And it's like, oh my god, dude, that just sounds fucking depressing.